Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Will and Luke Discuss,
a vodcast
and podcast
where we discuss content related to psychology,
personal growth,
self-development,
and well-being. This episode, we're discussing
Getting Things Done by David Allen. Oh no, you've resorted to the Kindle.
The Kindle,
that. I haven't seen your Kindle yet. Oh, nice.
Goodness.
You've got the image up on front. I like it.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to keep that as reference. That's it's one of the it's like the basic representation of the whole system that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
What you do with your stuff and inputs in your life and tasks and lists and how to respond to them. So
I think I'll tell you what I think the book's about, and then if you let me know if you kind of agree or want to fill in any gaps.
Please, I totally rushed my first one, so ignore that.
So I see it as it's like a manual for productivity rather than a sort of piece of writing you can sit and reflect on. It's like a step-by-step instruction manual for his productivity system. But he also says along the way that if you're not in a place right now where you're going to implement this fully, you'll still pick up a lot of ideas and tricks along the way you can put into the system you already have. So it's still valuable even if you're not going to go full on, because the actual system itself involves taking an inventory of your entire life and everything you have physically and on your mind, and writing it down somewhere on all separate bits of either paper or on your computer, and then sorting that into an organizational system so that you can feel that confidence that whatever you're doing is what you want to do. You know what you're not doing and are okay with that, so you can have that flow state, clear mind focus on everything you're doing.
I think you make the point, it is an instructional manual, but also there's a value system behind it, that the aim of this is to create psychological space, that we're having appropriate engagement with our life, that we're not feeling like we should be elsewhere when we're doing one thing. So doing one thing at a time, so we can be ultimately present in that moment and achieve that flow you talk about. And I think in general he advertises that this will make you feel more relaxed and confident in the fact that you're doing what you ought to be doing in that one moment. So I mean that was a huge takeaway for me, and I'm interested as we get into this to look at. I've taken some of the principles and the values of this and add them into my current system of organising, remembering, completing of tasks, tracking projects and that sort of thing. I've added a few things, but I know when we spoke 4 years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, something, you told me about this book, and I think maybe you'd started doing it or you'd given it a go.
This is probably the third time I fully implemented it, in my life.
Nice. Maybe just give us a quick overview of your journey of this, or kind of how you've approached it previously and how this time.
I think I found there's this podcast I used to listen to years ago now. I don't know if it's still running. It's called the School Sucks Project, and it's about education, learning, homeschooling, and spends most of its time slagging off government school systems. But it introduced this book. It did a 3 or 6 part series on implementing this productivity system into your life as a way of something to learn. And so I picked up the book from that, and there was some relief I got from seeing all my stuff that way, that it could all be out of my head and somewhere else. And when I got a taste of that release and that reduction of anxiety that I didn't even necessarily know was there, that kind of constant, there are things in the back of my mind I know I should be doing, but I'm not 100% sure what they are. Just Just ups that base level a bit.
Yeah, that's what he describes as open loops, right? There's lots of open loops, things that you haven't finished or that are on your mind that you want to act on.
But which aren't captured in some way outside of your head.
Yeah, so if you don't capture them in a, what's he call it? Like an external mind or an external system to your brain?
Yeah.
Is that what he talks about? Yeah, then.
Well, it's like the mind is really good at ideas generating, creativity, but it's like rubbish as a memory storage system and retrieval system. So it's like it always gives you the things to remember at like the wrong times. Like you remember to, that it's someone you're close to's birthday, like on the day rather than a few days before when you're at the shop where there are actual birthday cards around. Like your mind isn't good at doing that. But so it's about using the mind, what it's good for, recognizing what it's not so good for, and creating a system that's better at your mind at doing those things.
I'm aware we kind of jumped out of your story for a second.
Oh, okay.
I'll be interested to hear the end of that. Yeah.
I think I probably did the first bit of the system, or the first time I learned about it. So just all the capturing. And I think just from that, I felt a lot of relief. But inevitably, let it slip over time. And then I think maybe a couple of years later, when I got a bit overwhelmed again, I thought, now this time I'm going to fully implement it. And when I did that, I was also really, well, I guess still am, but maybe not so vivaciously into minimalism and like making sure everything I owned for a purpose. I owned as few things as possible. So when I implemented it that time, I tried to do it all digitally. So everything was on the computer. And I think there was something about that like in hindsight, left me not being able to kind of like have decent overviews of everything. Because, especially when you're working from a laptop, all you've got at any one time is this sort of A4 screen. And it's hard to really feel and get a trust that it's all in there and it's in the system.
It's worth us. Sorry, just to jump in. It's worth mentioning that this is a new version of the book that he brought out in 2015, and the old version was, God, when was it? 80s or 90s or something?
No, I think it was a lot later than that. I think it might have been 2003.
Later? Oh, really? Okay.
It was still before, like, he still talked about like PDAs and fax machines, and like there was a lot in there that's now redundant.
Yeah, so he's basically like released a new version to be up to date and adjusted in the digital world. So sorry, you first tried this on a computer, didn't like that, couldn't give you a good overview.
And just on that point, he also, like in the first book, he gave like a lot of specific recommendations for tools. Whereas this time he's like, I know the technology is going to rapidly change faster than I can say. So like, here's the principles of it. And the book's a bit more evergreen. Like in a 200 years, whatever technology is out there, you should still be able to use this current book to, and the principles in it to adapt to whatever technology you have at the time. Whereas the first one's a bit more like based on what was available at the time.
At that point in time, okay.
And so this time, I've got myself filing cabinets. I've got my in trays. I've got I've got my labeler.
I can't believe you went that far.
I've got a pad right next to me to capture any ideas that goes in my in tray, and so I am integrating it with my computer, and it's not all going to be physical because like. There are some things that are genuinely easier, swifter, better to do on the computer, but I'm not basing the decision on some ideal that it all has to be digitally in the cloud. It's like, no, if it feels better to have it physically, I'm going to do that. And I'm hoping that this time, having done that, it will make it kind of stick for me.
And can you maybe just give a brief, and I'm just interested to know, like, what sort of things are we talking about when we're making an inventory? Are we talking about absolutely every task? So, any paperwork or errands you've got to do or projects you're running or photos you want to organize or things you want to create or tidy up? Is it everything, or?
I'll start just with some examples of what's right in my inbox now. So as we were setting up this call, I noticed that hum coming through my mic again. And I think we worked out last time it's a dodgy XLR cable. So I just wrote down buy quality XLR cable, brackets, no hum. And I've chucked that in my inbox. As I was setting up as well, like I've got my audio interface and my webcam using my 2 USB slots. So I couldn't also use my wireless keyboard. So I put get USB extension and just chucked it in my inbox.
Nice.
I've got like a receipt here that needs to be filed for tax expenses. So like that's just one or two little things that goes just into in, so it's out of your head.
Yeah. It's what it calls stuff, right?
Yeah. So from
stuff goes into the in basket. Yeah.
And you can capture that like I just did then as and when it arises. But if you go through it more systematically, he's like, right, start at your desk, just look at all your like physical stuff around you, anything that's not what it is, where it's supposed to be, like get it in your inbox. If it's too big to go in your inbox, make a paper label for it and put that in the inbox. And he says that anything, sorry mate, I'm just going to get my GTD file from my filing cabinet and have a look at my notes. So anything that's not equipment, supplies, decoration, or reference material is stuff. So like those four things stay where they are. So my desk is a piece of equipment that can stay where it is. These notepads are supplies. They can stay where they are on my desk. I don't have much decoration. I guess there's a plant in the corner of my room. That's decoration because it's got no functional purpose. So that can stay where it is. And this all the files in my filing cabinet are reference material. So that can stay where it is. But anything that isn't those four things is kind of like hasn't necessarily been identified. So the idea is get it into your inbox and then later when you've captured everything, you can clarify what it actually is and what it means to you.
Yeah. I think it's probably, I guess before I ask a few more questions, I think it might be worth just outlining the 5 steps to mastering workflow that he talks about. So, I mean, the whole purpose of this, according to him, is, I might read it out, is, capture what has our attention. So that's referring to the stuff we're talking about, the inputs, and then clarify what each item means and what you want to do about it. And then organize these, which then presents options that we reflect on, which we then choose to engage with. Yeah. So capture, clarify, organize, reflect, engage.
Yeah.
And so I guess what he's talking about here is like really, as you go through things on your list, well, not necessarily, he would probably shy away from the word list, wouldn't he? But as you go, as you go through your inputs, making decisions about, what is important, what it exactly needs to be done about each input, what is the next action step, and then deciding from there whether it's actionable. Yeah. If it's not, then there's a set 3 things you can do about it. If it is actionable, there's a whole, I'm kind of just about to go down the whole flow chart of it all, but basically, it's either actionable or it's not. And then if it's not, you can choose to store that in some way, do it later, chuck it away, or he's drawn up his own. There we go.
Didn't have a printer.
Didn't you? Okay, I'll just use my Kindle. But I hope that. Yeah, sorry to I guess kind of jump in a bit, but I want to hear all about your process. But a bit of an overview just for those listening.
Yeah.
That's the view. So maybe can you give me an example of something that wasn't actionable and what you did about it, and something that was actionable and what you did about it?
Okay.
One of each would be good.
So something that's I'll take one. I'll take that. So buy high quality XLR cable. That's at the moment that's in the in tray, so it's not clarified. So the next step would be to clarify this as something that's actionable or not. As it turns out, this is an actionable item, but I need to define it better. I can't just buy an XLR cable. That's too abstract. I need to be somewhere more specific. So my next action for this off the top of my head would probably be do some internet research on the higher quality XLR cables and get an idea of price ranges. That would be my next action step.
Yeah, because you can't actually, I mean, I guess you could, but you can't actually like buy one until you know which one you want to buy. So it really gets you to focus on like, what is the exact next action step?
And where I've decided to buy it as well. So do I decide to go to a store and ask someone? Do I decide to buy it online? So I would automatically decide, right, I want to buy it online. It's simpler. But I don't know which one I want yet. I will just research who makes the higher quality ones and then get an idea of price range. If it's within my price range, then my next action would be to purchase it. And then it would go in my waiting for stack as I'm waiting for it to be delivered.
So that would go, so just in terms of what you would do next with that Post-it note that you've written on, that input, where does that go next? Does that go into a, you've obviously going to defer that. You're not going to do that right now, are you?
No, because now I have a priority to speak with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you put it? What
so when I process my in tray,
does that go in?
So
weekly, right?
I would put it in. So it would go on a next actions list, and he talks about so next actions are the real physical next steps you can actually do on something. So for example, internet research on higher quality XLR cables is something I can do. If I want to be more specific, I can put like, I don't know, 15 minutes or something. And I would put that on a next actions list. And he would say, unless you have like fewer than 25 next actions, which almost no one would, then you want to categorize your next actions into contexts where you can actually do them. So for me, that would be at my computer. So I would put it on my at computer next actions list.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's kind of gone into just look at the flowchart, like you've deferred that action, but you've put it in a place where it's like, these are the next actions I need to take. And I suppose
firstly, I've clarified it as something that's actionable. Then I've deferred it into a next actions list of things to do whilst at my computer.
Okay, no.
And what I would also do, what I'd also do is write. So because he defines a project as anything that takes more than one action, because having researched an XLR cable, I haven't yet bought it. This would be a project. So I would put on my projects folder to buy XLR cable. And that would be, your projects aren't actionable. You can't do a project. You can only do the next action step towards them.
Yeah.
But they're really helpful for reflecting. So like on your weekly review, you might look at your projects and be like, oh, I haven't actually bought that XLR cable yet. What's the next action I need to do for that? Or maybe I have bought it now, so I can just tick it off and stick on my waiting for list until it's delivered.
And something I think I liked in this is, so once you've got the next actions list, which is something I've now put into my weekly paper diary that I use weekly, I've started writing in next actions, and then basically it's getting too much, so I'm querying whether to do what you're doing. But he says like when you're deciding on the actions, there's like 4 criteria for choosing them. So that's looking at time available, the energy you've got available, the context, like what you're talking about, like when I'm at a computer, and the priority of it. So I imagine, for example, you said, right, next time you're at your computer and you've got, say, 15 minutes spare, you can look at your next actions list and go, okay, researching an XLR cable will take 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes before my next call comes through. This is a good one to do. And let's say, for example, you were like really tired and couldn't be doing anything. That might also be a good one to do. Whereas if you had a lot of energy, you might pick you had more time and more energy, you might pick a next action step that requires something that
like brainstorming a project, something that takes more creative energy.
I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about things. It's a bit more of a forgiving attitude, isn't it, towards yourself? You've got this whole list of things you want to do, and there's a bit of flexibility there. You know, like, okay, can I really be bothered like vacuuming the whole house when I've had a really tiring day at work? I'm knackered, but I'd also feel really good about myself if I can just get like a few little tasks, those next actions done, that might be a bit simpler or require me to sit on my ass instead of moving around. I like that. That's a way I've started thinking about it as well, those next actions, and then what circumstances are they best to do them in.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out as well that you want to make the capturing as easy as possible, and I think that's why you don't define everything when it comes into your head, otherwise it'd be too much energy. Like it was really easy as you were kind of logging into Zoom for me to write down get XLR cable and just chuck it in my inbox, but the extra, although it doesn't sound like much, the extra bit of thought into actually defining what is the next actual physical action I would need to do for this and where would I want to be, I might be like, I'll think about it later. Like, so there's a
but it's
difference.
there, you know it's there, and you know you'll think about it later.
Yeah, but I now trust that I will think about it later because the stuff has been captured.
And that's a huge part of this, isn't it? That often, something might pop into your head like, I really need to get that thing from the supermarket for that dinner on Friday night. But then you don't want that buy avocado to like pop up into your head in situations where it's not needed. Like if you're about to like call a client or you're at work, like I've really reflected on the amount of times that just stuff that's just not related to the situation I'm in pops into my head. And I guess even if it does pop in your head, you can go, that's in a place external to me where I know that I'll define that later or I'll act on that later. It's outside of you, which is quite a refreshing thing because I know personally I can become like quite frantic in wanting to get something done. Like the moment it's on my mind, I want to get it done and complete. And I think it's led to me like rushing things in general. So I think it also, I suppose, forces you to slow down and think really considerately, like in that defining stage about like what's actually the best way to progress forward with this rather than rushing anything. You're actually giving yourself the time and space to define things properly and choose the most efficient way of doing it. So even though this seems like a lengthy process or a time-consuming process from the outside, it's probably saving you a lot of time and energy in the long run.
Oh yeah, and that's part of the point, isn't it?
It saves you thinking about the XRL cable like 5 times this week during the week and thinking about when I'm going to check it out or half researching it. Whereas this isn't ideal, but like he says that a principle could be that you never need to have the same thought twice. Like if you capture it each time you have it, then there's no need for you to have it again. And like you said, if you happen to have it again, so you think about buying avocados whilst you're at work, it's like, oh, like I can relax that I've already written that down the first time I had this thought, so it's okay. Don't worry, mind, I've got this. And when you talked about rushing, then it's like you're probably, my guess would be you're rushing because you don't want to forget the stuff you have to do. So it's like whilst you're holding it all in your mind, if I get it all done, then I'll feel that release. But then it keeps on coming. The stuff keeps, the inputs keep coming. Yeah, and I think I've realised that at quite a young age when I first started having lists of things to do, like when you have your first responsibilities, when you actually have to start taking your studies seriously, or like I don't know, you've got things you need to do. I've noticed that pattern from quite early on. That I like to kind of get things done quickly. I'm interested to know, just with this example, if what other ways this could go. Say you wanted to either whether you could do that really quickly, for example, or whether you wanted to delegate it, or whether it was something you could maybe lock into your calendar. I know there's different ways we could think about this one example. I guess one, just to say, so you've got your buy XLR cable, you know what the next action is. Will it take less than 2 minutes? And what he says is, if it will take less than 2 minutes, do it. So that's one option you've got. And that's quite an interesting takeaway, isn't it? Like if something's just quick and you can do it and get it done, get it off your mind and it's complete. Yeah. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard to tell. That's a really valuable. I found that really valuable. And he definitely talks about that during the kind of capturing inventory process. So as he talks about taking an inventory of just all your stuff, whilst things come up during that take less than 2 minutes, just do it. Obviously, there would be times like if you're in a meeting and you think, oh, I need to text so and so about this, that might take less than 2 minutes, but it wouldn't be appropriate to like go on your phone in the meeting, for example. So you might just scribble it on your pad. So it's still sort of context dependent, but yeah, in the process of in taking an inventory of all your stuff, it's like when you can just do the quick actions as soon as they pop up.
Yeah, I think I have to do that a lot at work. My current workplace at the moment, I've been thinking obviously about how this applies in my personal life and in my work life. There's a lot of different inputs and things going on. You know, I have like a list of priorities and we speak about the priorities at the beginning of the day, like who we need to see, what are the follow-up phone calls, family meetings, all that sort of thing. Quick emails, you might get a text through like, yeah, you can just spot fire this, spot fire that. And I guess a lot of it is like intuition and just how you can manage it in your mind. Like there's some circumstances in which I guess you can't be like too stubborn with your plan. And what he's saying is like this actually gives you a bit of flexibility by knowing exactly what's what and what needs doing. It gives you more like psychological flexibility. Yeah. Which I've definitely taken away.
Yeah.
It's a different way of thinking about it. I'm just curious. So let's say you couldn't do it in the next 2 minutes. What are your other options?
So,
with XRL cable?
Well, I would stick it on my at computer next actions list. And next time I'm at my computer with free time, that would be the list I would pull up. And I would go through it and start cranking stuff off that list. What
about putting it in your calendar?
So
like, this is the day I'm going to buy it, or something like that.
I wouldn't do that because it doesn't need to be done on a particular day. He says that the calendar is kind of sacred territory for either appointments that have to happen on that time or that day. So, for example, my client appointments have to happen at specific times on specific days, so that they're in my calendar. And he gave an example of something that might say have to happen on Friday, but doesn't necessarily matter what time. And he's like, that should also go on a list on your calendar. But he's like, you should keep everything else off that, because it's like, if you put stuff on your calendar that doesn't have to be done that day, it can turn into you can lose sight of what does. It kind of dilutes the things that I definitely need to do this on Wednesday. And so it's better to have a list of a separate list for next actions that don't, maybe you'd like to do it this week or something.
And what would you do if you wanted me to buy the XR cable for you? Like you didn't have the capacity to, you just could not do it.
So I guess my next action would be contact Will. So I would choose the way to contact you. Like, would it be more appropriate to email him this, or would it just be easier to drop him a call or maybe a voice message? I would choose the context, so that would give me, let's say I said I'm going to WhatsApp voice message him. So then that would go on my app phones list. WhatsApp voice message Will, ask him if he would research and buy me an XLR cable. And then once I had done that, that would now go on my waiting for list, waiting for a reply of Will XLR cable.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of, would that would go on a waiting list, not like a next action to ask Will.
It would do it first. It would go on the next action on my phone's next actions list.
Okay.
Unless I was free right now, like if I wasn't in this meeting with you now, then it would take less than 2 minutes. I would just do it as I thought of it. So, I'm not the most appropriate person to do this. I know nothing about cables. Will knows loads about it. He'd probably be willing to do that for me very easily. I'll ask him. I'll send him a message. It's a bit too complicated for me to type out. It'd be easier for me to speak, but I don't want to interrupt him. I'll send him a voice message now, and then I'll stick that on my waiting for list, and so I can sort of review that at the end of the week.
Yeah. So it just makes me think of like in the Tim Ferriss book, he's like, just go to the person who knows the answer. Don't bother researching anything. So it's like, if you knew that I just, that was my thing, cables.
Yeah.
Like you could just go straight to me. I think that's a good amount of times I've like researched things when I could have just asked somebody. I mean, not that it's kind of researching. I'm not saying don't ever research, but sometimes you can just get like a really quick, simple answer.
Yeah, like I could be like, Will, send me a link to the best quality, reasonable priced XLR cable. And if I knew you knew that stuff, then it would be easier than me wasting time searching through the internet for it.
I love those people who just send you back like 2 links. Like, one of these two is great. You're like,
yeah, done. Don't have to think about it.
Cool. Have you got an example? Yeah.
I was just going to say, you asked me about one that wouldn't be actionable. Is that what you were about to say?
Yeah. I just think this is an interesting way of like hearing your process. Like, how you go. Is there something in your in tray now that's so it's gone into your in basket?
Yeah.
You've worked out what it is. You've defined it.
Well, if it's in my in basket, I've not necessarily defined it. So, for example, one of the things in my in basket is this bike bell. I haven't defined it yet, but it's just in there, and I know at some point I need to define, attaching this to my bike.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry,
so,
I interrupted.
Oh no. So it's there, and is it actionable? What if it's not actionable? What's an example of something that's not actionable? So
if it's not actionable, you either store it as reference material. So it's something that, an example of that is, so in my reference filing cabinet I've got down here, I've got this file for instructions, and in there I've got the instructions for my label maker and the blinds I recently installed. So like I might need to refer to those instructions someday, and I might not, but I don't want to get rid of them in case I do. So I've just stuck them in a reference file in alphabetical order.
Yeah. Okay, and then he talks about like a tickler file.
Sorry, before there are 2 other things. So you might reference it. Another thing you might do is throw it away. So it might just be rubbish. So for example, let's
time's passed or something.
Yeah, let's say, so I've got one of these receipts. I might have stuck it in there for tax purposes. I might pick up the receipt and think, actually, I didn't buy anything on here that would be for expenses, so I just need to throw this away.
Yeah.
And the third thing, if it's not actionable, is a someday maybe list, which would be, well, I don't want to work on this now, but it's a project I might want to do in the future. So I want to store it somewhere. I know I will look at it at some point, but it's not something I want to be working on at the moment.
So it could be something like, I want to plan like an anniversary trip in 5 years' time with my wife.
Right. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. You don't want to work on it right now, but it's obviously something that's important to follow up on. But you would, I mean, how often would you go back into these, I suppose the tickler file, how often would you be planning on revisiting the tickler file? Like, obviously not as much as your next actions list, right?
So with the someday maybe list, I'm just going to backtrack a little. You can either just have it as a list in a file, so it like during your reviews, whether it's a weekly review or at the end of the month or something, you would just like run your eyes over all your to-do some days and just double check, is this still something I don't want to do right now? Or it actually, this was a stupid idea, I'll just throw it away. Or actually, I'm in a place now where I do want to act on this project, so I'll take it out the Sunday maybe stick it back in my in tray and actually working on it.
Then go for it. Yeah, then define it.
Another way to defer it to the future is, like you said, to have a tickler file, which is a physical calendar system where we're on a 2-dimensional calendar, you would just write things on it. With this tickler file, it'd be a filing system with 31 files for each day of the month and then 12 files for each of the month. So you could post physical things to yourself in the future.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So you might, with your someday maybes, it might be that it's not just any random day I want to maybe do this in the future, but actually specifically, I want to be reminded of this in 3 months' time when it's closer to Christmas. I've got this Christmas idea. I don't want to buy it now. I'll stick it in my December file, and then when it comes around to December, I'll be reminded of it.
What's your, I mean, are you going to do that, or are you thinking of another way of doing that? Like, cause no. I tend to, stuff like that, I just write in a diary. I just go like, I buy a birthday card on this date. I just write it like 5 days before the birthday or something.
which is great if it's something you can write down. But let's say it's 6 months before your birthday. I'm in a shop and I found a card that would be like, it's so Will, it would be perfect for Will, I'm going to buy that. Where would I put that? Where I put it is in my sort of July folder in the tickler file, so I'm prepared to send it to you for your birthday on the 6th of August.
Yeah, then you get my address from your reference file.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Nice.
so although, like you say, with a lot of things, you could just stick it. If you know the day you want to be reminded of something, and it's something you could just have in writing, you would just write it in your calendar. But if you want to put like another example he uses is like foreign currency. Let's say you've got some Thai currency left over. You've already booked your trip to Thailand in 9 months' time. You stick it in your tickler file for that time. So when that month comes around, the cash is in the right file for you to remember, and it's just a decent place to store it.
So I guess with a like a tickler file, you'd be checking that every day. Like if there's something in there, then obviously it's for a reason. Or
yeah.
you need to remind yourself to check on that day and that. Otherwise, you might as well just have like a weekly tickler or something. Like that.
So each day so today, what's it, the 24th of September? So I would pull out my number 24 file, open it. Either there's something in there for me to refer to, in which case it goes in my in tray, or there's not. So I just stick it behind the the October file, and now the front of my file will say 25 for tomorrow, and the 24 will now be in reference to the 24th of October rather than the 24th of September.
Yeah,
that might sound too much to kind of hold in your mind to listen to, but
yeah, I wonder whether you could just do like a weekly tick rather than have one for each day. So like.
But the idea would be like, so with the birthday card example, I would want that in a file to look at in a few months' time, right?
True. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, so you mean like stuff to open every day? Week. Yeah.
Like as in like you go when you do your weekly review, you just look in and you're like, okay, here, what's the tickler things I needed this week, rather than like. I guess it depends how busy you are, but I can't imagine that I've got 365 separate things I need to.
Yeah. So you would. No, that makes sense. You could do it that way, but you would. Yeah. It's not like you have 365 files. It's you have the 31 and then 12, so you would have 43 files, and then
true.
So you would have the files, your daily files, but you don't have daily files every month. Like once you've done that day, you put it behind the next month, so it's
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So you don't have like a giant file. You can have just a small filing box of 43 files.
Okay, I finally get that now. Yeah, right. Thanks. Yeah.
So I couldn't post myself something for the 25th of January because I don't have any days in my January file yet. I would just stick that in the January file. So I'm just posting it for that month. But I could post something to myself for a specific day in October, which is a lot closer, up until the 24th. Because
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm following. Yeah. Okay.
So
I don't think I'm going to do that. But yeah. That makes sense.
If it's for next month, or if it's for within a month's time, you can post yourself something for a specific day. If it's further away than a month's time, you can just post yourself to that month.
Yeah.
So each month you would look in your monthly file and just review the stuff that's in there to do that month and get it on lists and things.
So I'm just curious, like how far are you into this process at the moment? Like, are you?
So I did.
Have you just been collecting stuff so far, or?
I did all the capturing. So I did like an inventory of all my stuff and all the stuff on my mind.
When was that? Like last weekend or something?
Saturday, yeah, and Sunday.
Did you enjoy it, or was it tedious?
Both. It was both like hard and exciting and relieving and anxiety provoking.
Yeah.
Because it can be, I would say relieving and overwhelming somehow simultaneously. So it's overwhelming to gather that many things that are somewhere on your mind, but it's also relieving to have all that externally.
How many things were in your in tray?
I didn't count them.
Like 300 something?
Yeah, it could have been that. Yeah,
something like that.
And so there's stuff. So there's also, there are ways to reduce what you capture. So I kind of have a sort of like a crap drawer, like a drawer with just odds and ends in. And so
you always have. You had one when you were like 12. I remember looking at it. So.
Always got to have one. And
always got to be used batteries in there as well. They can't be ready to use. They have to be used.
No, I can't be storing used batteries anymore. Life's too short. And so what I could have done, if I thought I had a week, say, to do the capturing process, I might have opened that drawer and started doing an inventory of everything in it. But I'm not going to do that on a weekend, so I just put like purge and organize crap drawer and put that in my inventory.
Yeah.
Same. A good example of something I did put in my tickler file would be, so like I still have some possessions in my parents' house, which obviously I can inventory because they're a few hours away. So I put like purge and organize and get my possessions that are left in my parents' house, and then I'll stick that in my tickler file. Realistically now, probably for December when I go down for Christmas.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe I might put it in a bit sooner in case like I happen to be going that way for another trip or something.
Okay. Wow. I guess I wasn't expecting.
So that's all the capturing, and then I've also defined it all. I've picked up a few more since then, obviously, but like I've defined the next actions for everything that was in there. I did that over Sunday and some of Monday, and then I got to the, so what was it? Capturing, clarifying. I guess I'm in a mixture of the engaging and organizing part. So I think the organizing stuff into. So I said like, it might go on my phone list, or it might go on my at computer list.
Computer list, yeah.
Or it might go, at my in town list or something like that. He says that that's kind of an evolving system that you'll have to work out just by doing it for yourself. He's like, here are some ideas which will probably work for most people, but like for your current context, it will evolve over time. So I'm sort of doing stuff whilst playing with these different contexts and lists and projects and things.
There could be things you do in transit when you're on public transport. So that might be like listening to a certain article or sending emails or whatever. Like there'd definitely be, and that's a really useful thing to think about. I suppose just wanting to kind of transition this to things that maybe, if you haven't done the full system, you haven't done this full inventory, which is obviously seems like a really rewarding, useful, and ongoing way of doing things. Like once you've set it up, it's kind of relatively once you've got to handle it,
it's just maintenance,
relatively simple to carry. Maintenance, exactly, yeah. And I suppose like thinking about for myself and people who might not be wanting to do the whole process, some simple things, thinking about like writing down like next action lists and really thinking about like what time and place is good to do those. So when you're living out your week, what sort of things can I get done when I'm on that 20-minute bus ride to work? What are typical things that I could get done? Some people might want to pay some bills on their phone. People might want to email. For me, it's like journaling. Like that's the time I do that. Or catch up on soccer highlights for the weekend or whatever. At a certain time, football. Oh, always feel bad. So that's something I've definitely taken away from this, thinking about like the context in which I do things.
Yeah.
And then, again, the things about, the time available, the energy available, the context said, and the priority of things. That's something I've really thought about.
I think that's really helpful because like he makes the point that say you're on that 20-minute bus ride, you pull out your next actions list and there are like just 200 things on there. You now have to do loads of clarifying just to decide what to do. Whereas if you pull out an at transit list and there are just 12 things on there, then you can actually just engage with any of them that like you have the energy and time for.
And you can maybe even like categorize them in like how long they take as well. Like you could have like a 5-minute actions list. You've looked at things like they'll take 5 minutes, or you could have obviously he wouldn't say this, but you could have like a 2 minutes action list, like something you can do like in an elevator whilst it's going up to the ninth floor or something.
He talks about like, in an ideal situation, your lists would automatically categorize into the amount of energy, time, priority, and context you're at. So at any point you could think like, oh, my 5 minute on a bus list with 50% energy would arise. But he was like, until that kind of technology comes into play, it's always a balance between the effort it actually takes to organize a system like that, versus what you just need to see in that moment. So he made a bit of a joke about, you could get your Excel spreadsheet out and organize things by 5-minute actions, 10-minute actions, 25-minute actions, and actually at the end of the day, if you're just sticking "Call My Brother" on there, was that time and effort really worth it? So there's kind of what would you call it, a tipping point where how much you organize your stuff becomes like less worth it than actually just engaging with it. And I think that's just for each person to find out for themselves, kind of thing.
Yeah. Something I've just, popped into my mind is like, when people like don't want to do things, they get in like a really lazy mood and they don't feel like doing anything at all. I guess I've reflected in those moments and maybe reflecting on like Atomic Habits a little bit about like just do something, like cast a vote for yourself, at least do one thing positive. Like I wonder if that'd be useful for people who find that they often don't really feel like they've got the motivation or drive to kind of do anything that feels productive. It's kind of like, well, if I can't do anything at all, then I'm just gonna choose the easier option, whether that's just kind of like sitting in front of TV or not exercising or just, I suppose, just being a bit lazy in general. Like, I guess I'm thinking it's like a good way of just reframing, like there's probably always something you can do that would make you feel like you're moving forward in your life or take off a layer of stress or pressure or make you feel productive as opposed,
and like
if you categorize those,
if you were knackered and just wanted to lie on the sofa and watch some TV, knowing that your system's in place such that like nothing's going to bite you in those 2 hours, like nothing's going to catch up on you, there's no looming deadlines hanging in the back of your mind, would actually allow you to relax and watch that television show rather than like lying there a bit semi-anxiously thinking like, oh, I should really be doing this thing and I've got this sense that there's 10 other things I should be doing. Because you're not actually relaxing when that's happening. You got cortisol flow around you. The amount of avoidance it takes to push those thoughts away, costs you psychological energy and
What impact do you reckon this has on like procrastinating on things? Does it kind of can only presume it helps alleviate procrastinating by knowing exactly what the next action step is?
I think it depends on the source of the procrastination. I think somewhere near the start of the book, he says that this isn't a mental health guide. Like if you've got depression or quite severe anxieties and deeper issues like this, this is a manual for how to structure your life stuff, but it can only be taken so far. So if the source of that procrastination was sort of like a chronic underlying childhood shame of failure and the idea of doing anything productive fills you with dread, then you're just not going to implement the system at all, are you? But if your source of your procrastination is just feeling too overwhelmed of everything you have to do, then I think this system would help with procrastination. So I think it kind of depends.
I think it can lead to like I like that feeling of when you're organized and you're getting things done that are on your list or of things to do that are good for you and are important for you. There's like a certain level of like trust you have in yourself. You become like reliable and accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
And I love that feeling of just knowing that, like, no matter what the circumstance was, is that like I had some order in my life, that like I was moving things forward. And also, like, it's good for the remembering self too. You know, you look back and go like, okay, I did actually spend my week wisely and I got a few useful things done, even if I didn't feel like it. I held myself accountable to a few things, or at least I was clear on what I needed to do, rather than just kind of sitting in this melee of just kind of laziness or uncertainty and worry, I guess.
We were talking before we started recording about the ways in which some of these books were overviewing, cross-reference one another kind of thing. And what you're talking about at the moment, and the sections you're referring to, really reminded me of the 6 pillars of self-esteem, kind of being personally responsible, personally accountable, having personal integrity. Like when you make promises to yourself, actually knowing you follow through with them. And I think this, I just in the last weekend, having implemented the system, I feel a bit lighter and a bit more confident in myself that I'm going to do the things I've actually committed to myself.
Yeah, you kind of you've made like an agreement with yourself and you're sticking to it, and there's a certain level of and it also shows you what you can do. It shows you what you're capable of. If you just like put in a bit of structure, or just organize yourself a bit, it's amazing what you can do. I think there's a lot of people who maybe don't get as much done as they want to do, or don't feel productive or do meaningful activities just because they haven't taken the time to define them as well, and make them take a response. That pillar of self-esteem, like accepting more responsibility, taking full responsibility for your actions and all the inputs in your life, and what do I want to do with them? Like,
and
what
also
do I want to act on them or not?
Yeah, and or not is important as well. They actually, once you know what you have on your plate and you actually have that organized, you can more confidently say no when someone asks you to do something, or when you have an idea yourself. Let's say, I don't know, this XLR cable, let's say a decent one was 300 quid. I'd be like, well, actually, I'll just live with the hum. Like, I can say no to that and just chuck that in the bin and be okay with that. Yeah. Like, and put it like, it's still resolved, even though nothing's actually changed, but it hasn't. It's mentally changed.
Well, that's what he says. We learn to be okay with what we're not doing.
Yeah.
So we stop feeling, kind of guilty about not doing certain things. That, like, we've made a clear decision that, like, this isn't important, or this isn't actionable, or this isn't worth my time. Yeah. I think that's something that definitely happens to me sometimes, or I guess with anyone who maybe has perfectionist traits, or feels that they need to act on everything or please everybody, that they actually, he talks about that himself, like wanting to please people and say yes to absolutely every task that's put his way. And he says that eventually, like, by saying no and being clear on what you will and won't do and what suits you, like, you actually get a lot of respect to the people around you.
Yeah, it's the same self-esteem stuff, isn't it? I like the example he kind of gives of, like, imagine someone in your life kept breaking promises to you. You said, oh, I'll meet you at the cinema at 6, and they just don't show up, and they just forgot, or they said they would do something and they didn't. Like, you would just slowly or quickly lose trust in that person and just not believe them when they said they would do things. And he's like, the same applies to you. Like, whenever you talk to yourself and commit to something, each time you don't do that, again, it's casting the votes thing, right? You're just downgrading your self-esteem a little bit more. You're having less integrity to yourself, less trust in yourself.
Yeah. He says there's like three things to do about, like, agreements with yourself. Is either, like, don't make the agreement, complete the agreement with yourself, or renegotiate it, which I know obviously sounds a bit like they would be your 3 options anyway, but it's the useful way of thinking about it. It's like, okay, if I'm not going to complete this agreement, I'm going to break it. Like, you don't make it in the first place, almost. Like, you stop making agreements that you're not going to fulfill.
Yeah. So let's take the cinema example. A friend asks you to go to the cinema tomorrow night. If you know what's on your plate, you can more comfortably like, oh, so I've got a lot on. I'm not going to prioritize that, so I'm going to say no, but thanks. Or alternatively, if you've already booked it in, something else comes up, you can more proactively call them, say, I'm sorry, something else has come up. I'm going to need to renegotiate our cinema thing. I could do it this time if you're willing to. But that would leave them more trust in you than just not showing up. And again, the same applies to yourself. Like if you renegotiate your own commitments to yourself, then you will still trust yourself in a way you wouldn't if you just avoid them.
There's a certain feeling you get, isn't it, when you complete something, especially with like a project that, had a lot of action steps, like that continual dedication to, showing up for tasks and taking responsibility and getting them done and renegotiating with yourself where needed. But, there's a real satisfaction in that. I'm just thinking, if I had that in every area of my life, thinking about the Tony Robbins podcast we did last week, think about like the 8 different life areas. If I was like totally get dedicated to the next actions in my health, like where would my body be? If I was totally dedicated to my like the next actions to get my my professional area being like the best worker I can be, or if I did in my financial life, like if I got myself organized and knew exactly what I needed to do, like who knows what I could be or where I could be.
Yeah.
Could be going, so I think it's just it's like really important, like to take that responsibility and go like, right, what is it I actually need to do? Get a full scope of what's going on in your life. And I guess that's kind of what you're doing with this system. But like once you know the ground you're on and you know what needs to be done, it can give you more direction. I imagine with this as well, like if you settle into this system and get good momentum with it, it could really what's the word? Like build on itself, like snowball into something bigger, and you find yourself taking on bigger projects because you're organizing them better, or like you're stretching yourself more than you ever could.
Yeah, I certainly feel optimistic about that happening, especially now I've actually bought filing cabinets. I feel like by doing that, I'm holding myself accountable. It's when you've just got it on your computer, it's easy to let it slip, but when you wake up and see the filing cabinet, you're like, probably should crack on with that.
Yeah, nice.
I'm glad you brought up the Tony Robbins thing, because I wanted to talk about how this David Allen getting things done, he emphasizes that it's a bottom-up approach, and he emphasizes why he does that. He starts with buying the cat food and the stresses you have at work and like catching up with the friends you've been meaning to. Like he starts with the stuff that's in your head rather than like, what's my life purpose? What are the general areas in my life? And working your way down. And I think
Horizon 5.
Yeah, I think that ties in really nicely with the Tony Robbins stuff, right? Because that Tony Robbins routine started at the top and was like, so like, why the fuck are you on this planet? Like what areas in your life do you actually care about? And like set some goals within those areas. What are the next actions to do within those goals? Stick those in your calendar and start working on them. With David Allen's like, no, like you've got to clear your head first. Like start with where you actually are at. Start with what's on your mind. Capture all that, work through that, and then that will give you space to think about, what are the areas of my life? Do I really want to be doing this job? And
love that. Such a good reflection. Yeah.
Because if you start from he's like, when you start thinking about the general principles, values, and areas of your life, it will help you generate more goals and ideas. But then if you're already not on top of the stuff you've committed to at the moment, that's just going to become even more overwhelming.
I think it's interesting, with a lot of these, I suppose, like self-help programs. You've totally got me thinking about, like, a lot of them do start with that, like, what's your dream goal? But then, like, as the book goes on and it kind of gets to the final 100, 150 pages, it doesn't seem to, like, they go, right, set yourself some goals, and like, what are the 3 things you're going to do this month to move yourself closer to the goals? But that's not how it works. It's like, what are like all the next action steps you need to take? Like really get like specific. And I think like those, I mean, it's nice to do both, but I wonder whether, for example, in this book, he hasn't gone in depth about like purpose and principles and vision so much. He kind of goes up to what he calls like horizon 2, 3, I guess. Yeah, like goals in terms of like projects. But, he says like ground is like your current actions is like the ground level. Then there's like horizon 2, which is your current projects. No, sorry, horizon 1, current projects. Horizon 2 is areas of focus and accountabilities.
Yeah.
That's the starting point, right? Like work out what it is that's important to you
Yeah.
and the specific actions. And then, from there, looking at those. And it's almost like you can work on the two separately in some ways as well.
Yeah, it's almost like he said, I feel like he's saying, if you get on top of everything you've already committed to in your life and you feel in a flow with it, you trust that you've got a system set up to capture and manage it all, and you can live in the moment with everything you're doing because you trust yourself to capture and work with it, then naturally you'll think about your future goals and your visions and your higher purposes, because you'll have that mental freedom to allow your naturally creative mind to do its thing. So it's more like he spends 5-6 of the book saying like how to organize buying cat food into your system, but like he almost has a faith in humanity that your values will creatively blossom for you once you're on top of everything, because most people aren't.
Yeah, and I guess in the process of going through all your stuff and working through that and building this system, like you would naturally work out like what's important to you and what's not. Like you'd eventually realize that like, okay, these things are taking way too much time and it's not important to me. So you might be putting more things in the trash, or you might, as you go through your tickler file, realize like, actually, no, that's not something I want to do. Like it's just a natural process of, I suppose, doing more things. You work out what things you want to actually do, and then eventually, narrow that down. And so eventually, you're only spending your precious time and, I guess, what he would say, like your attention, your focus, your presence on things that matter to you, rather than like wasting your time on tasks that maybe don't serve a greater goal. Like I imagine there's always going to be like those life tasks, those errand-based tasks that maybe don't feel as important. But I'd imagine as like this grows and you go on, that you'll be eventually the stuff that's going in your next actions list feel important to you. Maybe what goes in the in tray is often going to be random and have some total weird things in there that don't apply to you, but they just popped into your head. But like in that defining stage, like when you're defining things and what they mean to you, that's what he's saying, just deciding what it means to us. He says like defining what done means to you and what doing looks like as well. So once you've done that defining, in that process, you're just going to know whether this is important or not. Like you'll get bored pretty quick if you realize that all this effort you're going to put into something is really worth doing.
It's like, do I really want to spend all weekend organizing my dead and semi-dead batteries into different categories, or like
fuck them all off?
Exactly. Go play some tennis, like live a bit, It's interesting. Both of us, when we discussed the Tony Robbins program, talked about how much we liked his approach to your general areas of life, but didn't really engage with his sort of ending section on sticking stuff in your calendar. Like it was almost overkill, wasn't it? Like each step in your calendar had like six different boxes to tick, and it's like David Allen was saying, if the task is just call your brother, then do you really need to overthink all the like ways to organize that action? And I think
especially if it's a 2-minute action. Remember we said that like for some actions it'd feel like it would take longer to write down which goal area this was for, rather than just actually doing it.
That's why he suggests 2 minutes, because he's like, that's usually the threshold of where it's easier to do it than to actually just process it into the system. And
really interesting reflection with the Tony Robbins one. I really hadn't thought about that, but it's kind of nice coming at it from two different angles, isn't it?
It's almost like you could use, where at the end of David Allen's book he was like, and you might want to kind of, there are loads of ways out there in which you can reflect on your higher goals, values and purposes of life, but this isn't the program for that. And equally the Tony Robbins one does that well, but then ends on a way which just structure your next actions into your life, which is just overkill and felt too much for both of us to engage with. It's nice to kind of take both and stick them head to toe together.
Is there any, I suppose, coming up to final reflections and things like that, was there any comparisons you drew with Tim Ferriss' 4-hour work week at all? Anything that kind of maybe got you thinking you could integrate both, or is this a time-saving thing or a mental space-saving thing? I know he's talking about, cutting down your workload and cutting out the unimportant things in your life to focus on what's important to you.
Yeah, as you say that, it's I think, the idea of capturing everything, and then that allows you to cut out the non-important. I didn't. Yeah, to answer your question, I haven't considered it in the same way I thought about 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem and the Tony Robbins program, for example. That they entered my head a bit more than the Tim Ferriss one, but just thinking about it in the moment, I think maybe Tim Ferriss talked about the dream lines, so kind of the what you actually want to do with your life, which is a bit more with the higher end stuff, and then again talked from that point working down to get there. And I think this I like what David Allen's saying in that you might think of something and think, well, that's not important, as if to think, oh, I'll forget about it. So I know I've said it 5 times, but the buying cat food, for example. But he's like, your mind doesn't work that way. As long as something's on your mind will think you should be doing that all the time, and it produces equal amounts of tension, that stuff's unresolved. So I think I like the idea of capturing everything, however unimportant it might seem, and then deciding either to do it or not, and if you're going to, how. So I think that's a gap that this fills in for me. And I like the I suppose thinking about like how I've applied this, putting into my like weekly calendar, which I do have in there, like my habits, my goals for the week, my overall week view, and I put things in a calendar only if I'm going to do them that day specifically. And I'm having a next actions list to like reflect on if ever I'm have spare moments, or I find myself completing things quicker. Like I'm finding it's giving me more flexibility, and having everything there gives me more perspective as well. I can kind of see everything that I need to do that week, and anything that kind of pops into my head that's important to me, I kind of jot down in my diary. I wonder whether that list is going to get a bit too big at some point. But it's kind of nice to like, because I do a weekly review every week as well. So I look, what did I do this week? What's left over? What's the next important thing for me to do? And I try and schedule those in the next week. So I suppose giving me... Because that's already something he suggests in the reflecting part.
So I think that's I guess I'm integrating those, capturing the next actions and completing things in 2 minutes, but also I guess being aware of like, as I said earlier, like time, energy available, and the priority of it all.
You raised sorry you raised the Tim Ferriss book. I wonder if you raised that because there was something you noticed you wanted to mention.
I think just around deciding what's important for you to do. Like, I guess after the Tim Ferriss one, I'm getting got a bit dreamy about maybe just moving to Portugal and just being paid to read or something. And also it's got me thinking, and also I will get back to that, but we're kind of tying up a 3-part series here on like lifestyle design, time management, prioritizing, and I guess the Tim Ferriss one's kind of got me thinking about this sort of how I could do more things that are important to me and living a lifestyle that feels a bit more suited. So I guess I'm just looking at like my different responsibilities as well, making me think about like what responsibilities do I want to take on? Looking at my current workplace, there are some like responsibilities that I absolutely love, but then there's other parts of the job that I just don't necessarily enjoy. And I think that's the same with any job. But it's got me thinking about like if I can capture all of those things and look at them with a bit of perspective, then I can start actually coming up with a real vision of like what I want to do and where I want to be. Like what are the tasks that I'm actually having to do on a daily basis that I don't enjoy? And is there a way to cut those out and streamline my career or streamline my lifestyle?
Awesome.
But until that point, I guess there's kind of a lot of like maybes or niggling things that I complain about or don't like that I'm not actually going to act upon. That's something he talks about in the book. Like, I don't want to have lots of unknowns or undefined things that I don't like in my head. Whereas actually, if I can define what it is that I do and don't like, then maybe I'm in a better position to live a lifestyle that's more in line with my, 8 key life areas and is going a bit more in that direction, in line with those values, as opposed to just kind of trundling along and complaining about things I don't want to do.
I had a few things like that, and generally for me, the next action they came under was sort of a brainstorm this or draft ideas on this. So like I had at the end of each week, I note down all the clients I saw so I can keep tabs of the amount of clinical hours I built up for my governing body, but then I also sort of do a similar thing to keep tabs of finances for my tax return, and then I do a similar thing for the organization I work for. And it's like, well, actually, I'm kind of doing the same piece of admin for 3 different places. I'm not sure how yet, but that feels like a waste of my time. So in my next actions, I've got like draft ideas to streamline that admin. And that'll be
especially that streamlining side of it.
Yeah. So I can really kind of relate to that part of what you pulled out of the Tim Ferriss book, and the ways in which you want to kind of cut out the crap in your life that you just don't like doing, if you can, or at least reduce it, and making actually a decision on either doing that or just accepting it can't and living with that because it's a necessary part of something you do value, and being okay with that, but not just holding it as a maybe in the back of your mind.
I think, just that clarity just makes such a difference, doesn't it? Like, you're clear in your head then. Because I guess at the moment I've been going through all of this. Sometimes I think, like, have I got any like projects I'm doing or any plans? Is there anything that I'm working towards? What is like, because I've often like put it to the side. I'm like, okay, I'll do this when I get a project that comes around. But I feel like it could inspire me to actually like follow something through or design that life that I want to design. Whereas at the moment, because my job is relatively locked in for the next couple of years, feels like that side of it's done, but I haven't thought beyond that. And I guess that's happening in a few areas of my life, and especially feeling a bit restricted at the moment. I'm not able to explore as much as I'd like, but I think this sort of thinking, these ways of thinking and stuff will eventually lead to some inspiring visions that I can then act upon, and
nice.
Interesting projects I want to get on with. But I've really enjoyed these like 3 books. I think they've tied in really nicely. I like kind of doing it like this.
To do like 3 things that aren't exactly the same, but they come under the same category of maybe productivity or lifestyle design, and it's you get a few different perspectives. I think it's now just come to me in answer to your earlier Tim Ferriss question, that the idea of saying no to stuff or to stop doing something that you realize is not valuable is something that kind of crosses over between these two. Tim Ferriss talked about, if you're in the cinema and you don't like the film, just get out of there. Like, if you're halfway through a book you're not enjoying, just commit to not reading it. And there's a lot of crossover in that in this system, where it's once
commit to what you're not going to do.
Once you clarify your stuff, you can be like, actually, I don't want to do that, and I'm okay with that. And now it's off my mind. It's resolved because I've decided it's just a no, and that's okay.
Yeah. Nice.
I know we're sort of wrapping up, but I'd love to know more what are some of the best bits you've taken from it to sort of implement in the system you already have? Because I know you've kind of taken it that way round, right? Rather than like I have, just following the manual, you kind of took bits from it you like and put it into what you're already doing. I'm interested into what's the best sort of tricks you've taken from it.
The best thing, is adding a next actions list to my weekly diary. So having that at the bottom as well, so like I can have an overview and I can reflect on last week's next actions list, and guess having tasks in there that kind of aren't urgent, but they can float around a little bit. Like when I get the time, I'll do them.
So it's not a calendar thing, but it's when I've got spare time, look at this list and try and knock some stuff off.
Yeah. And I think it's, having this conversation, I think I would like to make my system a bit more sophisticated. I'm noticing how that is and isn't working in some ways. Other things I implement in general is just that knowing, we're talking at the beginning before we went on that, like, sometimes you read a book and it tells you things that you're kind of already doing and you're like, oh, this is really nice. Like, I've already got that as part of my repertoire. I think just that weekly review.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for the last, like, I'd probably say like couple of years, obviously.
Awesome.
Away, but like in general, every Sunday I'll sit down like in a nice spot and I'll like type out my weekly review and like reflect on not just tasks I've done, but like, was I behaving the way I wanted to? Was I communicating the way I wanted to? Where did I feel some resistance? Where did I feel some tension that I, been working on, or where could I be more purposeful? And I think knowing from his angle that a weekly review to look at everything that's going on in your life, whether that's a task or an attitude you're carrying.
Yeah.
And going back and go like, okay, cool. Actually, I did meditate 7 every single day this week. I did journal every single morning. I exercised 6 out of 7 days. I ate well 6 out of 7 days.
Yeah.
Being able to look at that, it's a continual way of reflecting and refreshing myself as well, like, and inspiring me for the next week.
It sounds like as well, you're looking at, during this review, you're looking at reviewing things on different levels. So you can actually review like just what stuff did I do on my next actions list, but on the higher level of values, it's like, well, how much did I live in line with my principle of the way I want to communicate, or how much I want to, look after my well-being or something like that. So you can,
and I do reviews. Let's say like every 3 months, I'll look at like my overall goals, like really take a full step back and look at it. And then, even, when me and you have done like the self-authoring program, where you do the Tony Robbins 10-day thing, like that's something you only tend to do like once a year, once every like 18 months. It'd be too exhausting to do that weekly. But I think this
probably a waste of time.
But this has really inspired me to like reflect more on the ground level, the current actions. What are the next actionable things I need to do? So, I mean, I do some of it, but I think that's something I'd like to do better. For sure.
Yeah, I would. I think the way I phrased this to my girlfriend was like, if I was making a Bible, this would be one of the books that would go in there. Like,
nice. With 6 pillars of self-esteem, right?
Yeah, that would go in there. And the first half of The Road Less Traveled.
The last half could go in the actual Bible.
I think it was ripped from that anyway. Yeah,
pretty much. Good stuff, mate. Good. So, what are we doing next? Is it
We haven't decided. You know what's funny? Yeah. So if I open my Evernote and I go to my tags, I go to my at will list. In my at will next actions is talk to Will about next few books for podcasts.
Okay. Well,
so we were either going to do nonviolent communication or that Mark Bowden one.
Mark Bowden on So, but basically the next 3 we're going to do is on communication, body language, signaling, that sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to this one. This has been something that's kind of just come a bit more present in my life, thinking about some reflections I've had from work as well, from colleagues, and I guess increasingly just communicating to new people in a new job. And I know you do a lot of that in your job. So I think, nonviolent communication is going to be the first one we start on. And then
define our next action.
There we go. Yeah. And there's a couple from Mark Bowden I was interested in doing. But body language is a fascinating one. So I'm interested to get into it, and maybe we'll see some links between, on confidence or attached, maybe, that sort of thing. There could be some interesting links. So, really looking forward to those. And it's nice to be back. I think we've had 2 or 3 weeks off, so it's good to be back on the cast.
Yeah. Nice. I look forward to our communication trio.
Awesome, mate. Much love. Chat to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.